Computer. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Davina Lloyd, and I'm the chair of the steering committee for the CEDAW People's Tribunal. And with me this afternoon is Rebecca Munro. Rebecca is a PhD student out in Florence, as you can probably see from the background. She has a background in law with a law degree from Durham University, but her particular interests are economic and social rights and social movements. And as such, we actually have met before. We met pre-COVID pandemic when she started her research and was interested in the work of Back to 60 in trying to get recompense for the 1950s women of their pensions, and the work that I was doing at the time with the CEDAW committee. And so we're now meeting yet again. Rebecca is finishing off her research now, but we're meeting in the context of the fact we've now got the CEDAW People's Tribunal looking at how we can call the government to account for the lack of women's rights in this country. So welcome, Rebecca.
Thank you.
And thank you. Can I start by just asking you, what first sparked your interest in social and economic rights and social movements?
Yeah, sure. So I think my interest in socioeconomic rights was sparked primarily from my background. I was the first student in my family to go to university. And as a kind of first generation university students, I was very aware of socioeconomic inequality from quite a young age. And like many people in their 20s, all I've experienced in my life, or I guess my adult life, has been characterized by austerity. And as a student at Warwick University and Durham University, I was taught by professors about the disproportionate impact that austerity measures were having on women and on people with disabilities or vulnerable people. And that generated an interest for me because I didn't understand the fact that, you know, the austerity measures were having a disproportionate impact on women, but women were having very little say in kind of the policy making that was being made. And I think it sparked a fire in me, and I saw the injustice in it, and then that kind of contributed to my decision to pursue a career in social and economic rights.
Right, thank you. And so during your research work, or maybe prior to that, have you had any involvement with CEDAW? And if so, could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, primarily during my PhD research, my main involvement in CEDAW has been seeing the opportunities that are available to civil society organisations to use CEDAW as a tool to hold governments to account. And obviously that's how I came into contact with you as well. So my main contact with CEDAW in itself has been in seeing it as a tool that can be used, or a legal mechanism that can be used to try and bring about accountability for violations of women's social and economic rights, like their right to social security, the right to housing. Yeah.
So given that we've talked before about CEDAW and how we wished to use CEDAW in a previous existence, I'm just wondering how you think that CEDAW would actually help if it was actually fully incorporated into UK law. How would that help the things that you've been thinking about?
I think if CEDAW was incorporated into UK law, it would be hugely beneficial, mainly because at the moment, you know, civil society are so active using CEDAW, and you've got great organisations like Back to 60 and women's organisations that are using it, but they're not having much give in kind of getting enforcement at the domestic level there, despite having such strong recommendations given out by the CEDAW committees. And I think the domestic enforcement of CEDAW would bring about a way that it would be an enforcement mechanism, and it would provide empowerment to women and to civil society organisations so that they could use the provisions that are provided in CEDAW and get government accountability for that. So I think it would be hugely beneficial, and even in the sense that the UK's framework mainly protects civil and political rights, and because our main framework is the European Convention on Human Rights. And I think if we were to incorporate CEDAW domestically, then we would have greater protection for social and economic rights, and greater protection to ensure that policy making for social and economic rights takes into consideration substantive equality between men and women. So I think it would have a huge beneficial impact.
Well, as you know, the CEDAW was ratified by Margaret Thatcher in the mid-80s, and yet our government still have failed to incorporate it into law. And perhaps it's because their view of women's rights is not as high up the agenda as we would wish it to be, which I think leads us to why we want to have a tribunal, collect all the evidence, to have it looked at by judges, and call the government to look at this and say, look, this is what is the situation? What are you going to do about it? Because now is the time, as you say, with it's not just the 10 years of austerity you've lived through, it's the effects that the pandemic is going to have on women, the effect that Brexit is going to have on women. Now, I know you have had some prior experience of working with tribunals. One, I understand, with the International Criminal Tribunal for the former Yugoslavia, and another with the Texas Defender Services. I wonder if you could tell us a little bit about those and why you think tribunals are so important.
Yeah, so I interned with the Texas Defender Service when I was at the University of Warwick, and my role there was to defend indigent people that were facing the death penalty. And then at the International Criminal Tribunal, the former Yugoslavia, I worked on the defence team for the Ratko Mladic trial. And I think in my legal experience that I had there, the main thing that I got from that was the impact that tribunals can have as kind of truth-telling mechanisms, and in the sense that by having people there that can provide their real lived experience of, I imagine in the CEDAW tribunal experience of, the impact that government policy is having on women, or or in my case at the ICTY, the experience that people have had of war, can have real benefits in the sense of bringing about government accountability and acting as a forum for people to share their lived experiences.
Right, thank you. So that is where we end up hoping to go for June this year, and we're very busy collecting lots of evidence. So thank you very much for joining us today, and we hope that the people who watch this will be inspired to become involved even more with us. Thank you very much, Rebecca.